Okay, sweet. Welcome to episode 7 of the Rugby Abroad podcast. Been absolutely buzzing for this one, as I know some of the listeners have as well, sending in a few questions for our guest today, Jamie Hagan, Irish international and currently playing his rugby in Béziers in the south of France. Jamie, how are you today, mate?
Great, mate. Thank you so much for that marvellous introduction. I don't know. You make me sound amazing. One cap for Ireland, Irish international. I'll take it.
Oh, mate, I'm not even finished with the introduction yet. Hang on.
Oh, really? Oh, well, keep going, man. Keep going.
No, well,
my head is just gone.
No, yeah, well, you're definitely an interesting rugby character to get on. You've got a brilliant story to tell, I'm sure. You've played a lot of rugby abroad, and that is the stories I'm trying to get across on the podcast. So it's great to talk to you. Just having a look back on your career so far, you spent the beginning of your career, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, that's absolutely fine. You spent the beginning of your career in Ireland, and at the time, just after you got your first cap, you moved out to England to the Premiership, and then after a stint with London Irish, you moved over to Australia. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. In between that, I went on loan back to Ireland twice. So I was in England, and my old club in Ireland had injury issues, so I went back. I played there for 4 months, and then before I went to Australia, I went back and started the season again with my old club again. So I actually signed for Leinster in total 4 times. So that I think that has to be some sort of record.
Wow, nice, mate. And so just talking about the leagues you actually played in, we're talking about the top leagues here in world rugby. You played in the Pro 14, in the Premiership, in Super Rugby, and coming back to France, you're playing in the Pro D2, which I know personally is a very, very high level of rugby. The only one missing is top 14. Is that still on the list of things to do, or?
Well, yeah, like a couple of years ago, definitely. I had interest from Stade Francais a couple of years ago, when the World Cup was on, as a joker, and I was sort of saying to my wife, "Oh, it'd be nice to play at the top level," but I think that it was for 4 months. It was a 4-month contract as a 32-year-old or 31-year-old, I think, at the time. But I sort of went with the safe option and stayed here in Béziers, and I signed for another 2 years, just because, obviously I would love to play top 14, but the uncertainty of that contract as a man who just got married just wasn't for us at the time. But yeah, no, 100%. There's sort of a lot of chat here at the moment in Béziers about the Emirates guys coming in and buying the club and wanting to go top 14 within the space of a year. Obviously, that's going to sort of come apparent in the next 2 to 3 weeks whether that's actually going to happen or not. So it's interesting.
So the dream's still alive, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I was chatting to one of the guys who played here a couple of years ago. We were in the quarterfinal, and he was retiring last year, but he said that if they had went up, he would have signed a contract for €1. Now, I don't know if I'm that desperate to play. Top 14, but yeah, no, it would be nice. Like, it would be pretty much every major league in the world, which would have been, a good feather in the hat. But I'm happy that I even made it to France. Like, I said when I was a youngster that I would always love to have come here, and I know guys who'd been here. I played with guys who came back to Ireland after. Yeah, they actually did stints in France, and they loved it, the culture, the lifestyle, and it's everything that I expected to be and more. Like, I love the people down here. Yeah, I love the lifestyle. And sorry, go on.
No, yeah, I was going to ask you exactly that. It's the longest stint, I think, that you spent in one club, or at least since Ireland. And so I guess I was going to ask you, is it somewhere you feel settled? And clearly it is.
Yeah, no, it's mad. Like the longest I spent before this was probably 2.5 years at the club. So this is coming into my fifth season this year, which is mad. Like I've been here since 2016.
Yeah.
It's now 2020, and I'll be here 2021 for sure, obviously, or hopefully. So yeah, it's been mad. Like, you sort of, when I arrived here, first I arrived as a joker, when I was 28, 29, I think.
What is a joker? Can you just explain for anyone that doesn't really understand
sorry
that?
for all your viewers. A medical joker is somebody who comes middle of the season usually, that replaces a player that is injured for a long time in their squad.
Yeah.
So each team has a set number of players that they can sign in a certain window, and when that window is finished, they can't sign any more players unless they have an injury. That's usually serious. So I came for one of the props here, and yeah, it was a funny story actually. When I arrived, the guy who signed me got sacked two weeks later. Manny Edmonds, who's now in Perpignan, a really nice guy. I was coming off a bad stint in Australia. I had some personal issues, and he signed me. And I was just expecting to go and play for 4 months. I was actually just, sort of planning to retire, to be honest. And I came, and that happened, and I was like, oh my God. I remember going home for Christmas, because we have a break here at Christmas time, which is lovely. In comparison to the other leagues, which have to play right through Christmas, which is a nice bonus here. I remember coming home and speaking to my wife and be like, oh, this place is mad. Like, I think I'm just going to pack it in and go home and try and find a job. And she was like, no. Like, and I was like, you don't realize how crazy it is. Like, the presidents all come in and basically just sacked everybody. And like, I'm surprised I'm not sacked. I remember the game before Christmas holidays, the players actually picked a team, and they lost the game. It was away in Dax, and like the atmosphere around the club was just so down. But then 4 months later, I played a bit. The new coaches came in January, David Gerard and David O'Connor, and I played quite a bit. Played well, and they signed me, and we won a lot of matches. And like the comparison in the ambiance from when I arrived in December, like, it was just like doom and gloom, to like winning a couple of matches. The fans were back in the stadium, the music was going. You really got a taste of what it's like, like in France to be winning. But I've experienced both sides of the coin. Like, when you lose here, like, the fans don't mind. They don't mind getting on your case, as you know, Sammy, and giving it to you. No, but so it's been an interesting time. Well, that was an interesting time.
Yeah, nice. And just away from rugby, what's France like then as a country, as a place to live? I mean, you're in the south, so it's famously great weather. You're by the sea. But tell us a bit more about the culture for you and how it compares to home.
Yeah, like, it's way more laid back than, I'm used to, coming from a big city in Dublin. Even though it was a country bumpkin, like, the lifestyle's way more relaxed. To what I'm used to, because I lived in London as well. I lived in Melbourne. Everybody's like hustle bustle, going, coming. Everybody's way more like, laid back here. They take long lunches. They take, long time to eat their dinner at night. But very, very passionate about the rugby all the same. So yeah, it's been, I wouldn't say massively different to what I'm used to, but like, just the way people, I suppose, everybody says hello to each other, which is great. I think that's fantastic. I think that, like, is a very good thing that, more societies could probably do. It's just, be courteous and say hello. Like, in other clubs you walk into, some mornings you wouldn't even get acknowledgement. At least if you're here in France, like, they have to acknowledge you, even if they don't like you, or if you had a disagreement, like, So I like that about the club down here, the culture. French people, they wear their, as you know, Sam, they wear their heart on the sleeve, and they're very passionate, and like, everything is a show, nearly like a bravado sort of thing. Where I suppose us Anglo-Saxons, as they call us, are a little bit more calm in our preparation and in our, I suppose, our emotions, But apart from that, it's it's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, just it reminded me of the sort of French tradition of every morning, or the first time you see everyone, you shake everyone's hand, or you give everyone like a, a high five or something. And it's not something that has existed in every changing room I've been in, and it does give you a little lift when and it's a nice thing just to just start your day saying hello to everyone, even if it's just like a sort of like courteous thing to do. It is a sort of little lift in the morning, and it's that part of the culture is really nice. It's something that I enjoyed definitely as well. I wanted to ask you, obviously on the theme of playing rugby away from home and abroad, was it an easy move for you the first time you moved across the Irish Sea to London Irish?
Um, yeah, no, to be honest, moving sort of never really bothered me. I lived away from home since I was 19. I moved to Wicklow, which is about an hour and a half from my house, and I've been steadily moving further ever since. I went to Galway after, and when I came back to Leinster, I lived in Dublin away from my family home. So like I've always sort of been independent in that way. So moving to England wasn't actually that bad. I suppose the moving to Australia probably was the hardest because just of the sheer distance
Yeah.
for me and for my partner. But yeah, like I think it can be difficult for certain players, especially if it's your first time living away from home or moving away from home. But I think the fact I was always independent, I was looking forward to experiencing a new city, so I didn't find it hard. So like being here now in France, it's sort of just like normal, like water off a duck's back nearly. You just come and you sort of just try and fit in as best as possible, like.
Yeah, sure. Going on to the theme of France, and they've just announced the third professional league, which is to be honest quite crazy when looking at it as an outsider and looking back at England, for example, which has just the one fully professional league now in the Premiership, the Championship, which has announced massive funding cuts from the federation, from the RFU, and looking at even Ireland with there's really few professional opportunities for guys there. I'm looking at France, and they're actually creating more, and it's like, what shouldn't our home countries be following the example being set? I mean, it seems that there's something they're doing right in France to be able to generate such a level of professionalism. What do you reckon?
Yeah, like I think that it's obviously good and bad. I think some of the clubs, even in Pro D2, suffer financially.
Yeah.
So I suppose in theory it's going to be fantastic for the younger players who are looking for opportunities to play. But I suppose only the next couple of years will actually sort of see whether it's going to be the right thing to have done. Like I'm all for it. Like I think France, obviously, we have a big playing population and a big population in general. Like I think in England, I think some of the stuff that's after happening with COVID and all the stuff that happened in between with the cuts and the salary caps. I think that's very, very poor. I think the Premiership and English rugby in general is a very, very wealthy sort of union, and I think the fact that they are making these cuts basically at grassroots level, you could say, like some of the clubs, especially in the Championship, who have produced so many players who have played at the highest level and in the Premiership, to start cutting funding for those those teams now, I think it's a travesty in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like they pay their England internationals 20, 30 grand a match or something in along those lines. That's a contract for a young player playing in the Championship. I think that other nations, like I know, for instance, like Ireland, like the international match fee is a third of that, maybe even less.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the wealthiest unions in the world, and I think that with all that money that they have, to be doing what they're doing at that level, I think it's very, very wrong. Like, you see here in France, they're all about developing the game of rugby, and they want less foreigners playing the game here in France, and they've done that successfully over the last 5 years by reducing the number of foreign players in your match day squad each year for the last 5 years. So now this year there's only 6 players allowed in the match day squad, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
I think in Ireland it's a little bit different. I think our playing population compared to England and France is a lot less, and even the same in Scotland and Wales. Like the playing percentages and just the sheer numbers that we have as a population doesn't add up to have more professional teams. And the sad thing is, especially in Ireland, the amount of young players that are having to leave that are amazing players and that probably could play just, maybe just a little bit behind the level of another guy, and are having to, try to apply their trade in the championship or maybe move to the Premiership is incredible. Like the outflux of players from Ireland over the last couple of years, and really, really good players, is incredible. We only have 4 professional teams.
Yeah.
That's 120 professional players.
It's nothing really, is it?
It's nothing really. Like, here in France, now they're going to have, potentially they're going to have, the guts of 42 or 43 professional teams with squads of 40 players, like, which is, incredible. Now, as I said previously, is that sustainable money-wise? Because a lot of these clubs are obviously individually funded by, whichever presidents own them, the money men behind that. So, yeah, we just have to wait and see with that. I think in England it's a travesty. I really do. I think that some of the clubs in the Championship, that have been round and like, obviously you played for some of them as well, like the Jersey Reds and the Doncasters. Yeah, I think it's horrible, but I'm sure that the RFU are going to do a 360 on it, or a 180 even. Well, I hope so.
Yeah, you'd hope so, but I heard there might be even further cuts as a result of what's going on, the COVID, etc. It's not a good time.
I think the COVID is just like an excuse. Like, I think the money is there. Do you know what I mean? Like, they own Twickenham. Do you know what I mean? Like, you sell out Twickenham, Six Nations. Like, the amount of revenue that they create. Like, considering that they've had World Cups, they've hosted World Cups. Like, it just baffles me that they can pay Eddie Jones €1 million.
Yeah.
And then they can't, try and fund some of the grassroots and some of the teams that are struggling, like, because the players that play in the Championship, there's a lot of good players that have come from that have actually, played for England.
Yeah,
you need to give back and support that, like, But I suppose at the end of the day, who are we to say? Like, obviously we're not the money men, we're not the business people who run the show, because rugby, it's sad to say, over the last 15 years is it's become a massive sort of business model, Sam.
For sure.
And crunching numbers rather than crunching loyalty to clubs or whatever you want to call it, like.
Sure. So listen, you've gone on a bit of a journey. You've got a lot of experience behind you. You're now 33 years old.
Yeah, 33. Couple of greys to show for it as well.
And I was going to ask, do you see yourself now in sort of a role model role for guys coming in that might have, if you see guys coming from abroad or coming from outside of France, you've been in the club 5 years now, do you take on the responsibility of helping them settle, that kind of stuff, or do you see your role has changed somewhat within the team?
Yeah, like, definitely. No, I think that when new players come in, especially younger players, to try and give as much of my experience as possible. But at heart, I suppose I'm still a competitor and I want to play. So, I was trying to find that balance. Like, I think getting older in your career, you never lose. Like, I've never lost that sort of hunger to play. But I suppose when I don't play, I'm not as disappointed or moody. Like, I'm happy for, like, especially if you're helping some of the young guys out who are playing ahead of you, like let's say some of the young props who are coming up, and you can see that some of the stuff you've done with them is actually paid off, and they're working hard, and then it doesn't hurt as much, like especially not as much as it used to, I suppose. But like I definitely still want to play. I still feel my body feels good, and I still have a lot to give. But yeah, no, we're a team. Like I suppose like that's what you sort of learn as well. Like rugby's a team sport, and a lot of guys coming from abroad who come here. Like I remember when I arrived, there was a lot of nice guys who helped me out. So you sort of try and reciprocate that, and help the next guy who's coming in. Like, and then if you instill that in the next guy, then hopefully they will do that the following time. When you're gone. So I suppose like try and leave the club in a better place. Try and put your mark on it as best you can. Like, and I hope I've done that in my time here in Beziers. Maybe not so much like results or success, obviously, because we haven't won anything, but just I suppose leave the guys who are in a better place. Like I love a couple of guys signed for top 14 who we'd know, like Wesley Douglas and guys like that who could play at the next level easily. And it's sort of satisfying when you see that. Like even though they've done it themselves, like you've hoped to think that you've helped them a little bit on their journey to that next level.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice feeling seeing those close to you do well. I just wanted to get your views on the differences maybe between the leagues that you've played in. Pro D2, people know it as the second tier of France. How do you compare the level you're playing at to the Premiership, to Pro 14 as well? Can you go through those, and Super Rugby even? Maybe you can just give us like a little debrief of each of those leagues and tell us what are like the key aspects of the rugby in each of those.
Yeah, of course. Like I think that people have preconceived ideas of Pro D2. They think, it's like the second league and all that. I think it's probably one of the harder leagues that I've played in. There's no TMO. The referees sometimes they miss a lot of things because of that. A lot of referees aren't professional either. So I think when you play at the highest level, you have a lot of that legality that comes into it, that the referees are on the ball with every off the ball incident in rucks, people jabbing and jiving. But tough going through the leagues that I played in. Like I suppose the highest level I played is Heineken Cup, which is probably just a level below international rugby, to be honest. Like, you have the best of the best playing week in, week out in that competition. And then obviously Pro 14 or Pro 12 when I was playing, there's some very, very tough teams in that league as well. Like you come up against some very, very, very good operators, like a lot of the internationals, especially when they play. It's very fast, maybe not so much more forward orientated like the Premiership. I found when I went to the Premiership, a lot more just grunt up front. They want you heavy, rucking, not necessarily, passing the ball. It's just, carry, like, And then when I went to Australia, they focused loads on skills. The forward sort of game wasn't big. Scrum, line out, just get the ball and let the backs play, and then let the forwards play as well. Like, which was great. I really liked that. I really enjoyed that sort of philosophy of playing. And then here in France, it's sort of just like, sort of typical French jouet. When it comes off, it's amazing. And then you get celebrated by the coach and everybody's on your back. And then if it doesn't, then they're on your case. I think the structure part here, like they try and put in a structure, but normally it never gets sort of followed. As you know, but not sort of much difference in terms of physicality. Like there's big guys everywhere. Everywhere you've gone, like this is a professional league. Everywhere I've gone, I suppose, like there's always big dudes playing and trying to run at you. I suppose from the top level to Pro D2, you lack a little bit of the skill set, especially in the back line. I think some of the skill set is very, very top, the speed as well. But in saying that, I said about the refereeing, I think it can nearly be harder sometimes to play in that sort of environment. Just from my experience, like you try and stay on the ref side as much as possible, but here they don't see anything, or they don't want to see anything. So like there's so many different fights and niggles
Yeah.
and rucks and different things.
Yeah. Mate, you've obviously got one cap for your country. I wanted to ask you what your best rugby experience of your career has been. Would that be up there?
Yeah, that's one of the most amazing moments I've had through my rugby career. Definitely, I was in Houston in Texas and playing against the States on the summer tour,
Wow.
and we sing our anthem, which is Ireland's call, but it's just a song, so it's not our national anthem. Well, it's not my national anthem.
Yeah.
And we sang that, and then the USA had their national anthem, obviously, and the stadium was packed, 30,000 like fans, mostly American, were singing the Star Spangled Banner, and that
Yeah.
was an incredible experience to hear somebody else's national anthem. And then planes flew overhead. I only
Yeah.
played 35 minutes. I probably couldn't tell you if I touched the ball once, but it was just an amazing night. And my family were there.
Oh, great.
My mum flew in, and I had friends there as well, which was it was an incredible experience. I had a great 6 months actually leading up to that, because we won the league, the Pro 12, and then we won the European Challenge Cup. So in the space of 3 months, I basically won 2 competitions and then played for Ireland. So
Amazing.
yeah, it was amazing, and then it sort of all went downhill from there. No. But that particular time, I was 25, 26. That particular time was, incredible. I'm very, very lucky to have been part of, the group that did that, because only when you're older now you realize how, you don't realize at the time, but like realize how lucky you are to actually have won something. Talking to a lot
Yeah,
of guys who never, who've gone through their whole professional career, who never actually won anything. So,
yeah,
very, very blessed, I suppose, at that particular time. Only reflecting on it now that I realize how lucky I was.
for sure. And could you, if you had to, pick out a worse career moment?
Jeez, I've had too many of those, Sam. Lot of ups, but way more downs in this job. I suppose when my wife got sick when we were in Australia, and I've spoke about this on our podcast, it was an extremely difficult time in both our lives, and I let that affect me in ways that I could never even imagine it affecting me, just because I didn't speak about it
Yeah,
to anybody. So that particular time in my life was, personally and rugby wise, was terrible, because I shut myself off from everything, rugby included, and I was doing stuff that I would never have done in a million years. I was drinking way more, especially at night time. Even unbeknownst to my wife, who was sick and wasn't sleeping well and just closed off. And I remember drinking before games even and stuff like that. It was just a very sort of, not that I was an alcoholic or anything like that, but just doing stuff that you wouldn't normally do. Just wasn't a great time. I spoke about this before, just about speaking about your problems. Sometimes it's very hard for young men, I think, to open themselves up and to
yeah,
speak about how they're feeling. And that was, it was textbook what I sort of went through, completely closed off. And
yeah,
hindsight is, hindsight is 2020, Sam. I would have
sure.
loved to have, gone back and, spoke about it with my teammates, the coaches, and that sort of regret I do have, that I didn't do that. But I've learned from that. I learned from that sort of time. Me and my wife are in a much better place now, thank God, touch wood. And yeah, so both of us are doing well. And at the time it was very, very tough for both of us. So
Yeah, for
that
sure.
was
I
that
guess
was
I guess made even harder by the fact that you're so far away from home there. Your support network's not the same as it would be if you were closer to home. It's not so easy. I mean, you're talking about a completely different time zone as well. If you wanted to talk to people, it's hard to do so, to find the right times and stuff. I can imagine that must have been a horrible situation to be in.
Yeah, exactly. And you sort of make excuses then as well. Well, I was making excuses, like, and that's not who I was as a person. I'd never make excuses, but like you sort of even feel sorry for yourself, and then you're like angry, and yeah, it was just it's just one of those things that sort of got on top of me at the time. But yeah, like it was very difficult. Like I said to you previously in the podcast, like I like living that far away from home. It was very, very tough, very, very tough.
Sure, and I guess that's just something to sort of just pause on with regards to playing rugby abroad, is that it is a fun adventure, to speak, and we talk a lot about the stories and how many great memories and great experiences and amazing friends you make, but also you are far away from your loved ones as well, and that is something that does go around your head more often than someone might think. And I guess, like you say, just speaking about it with the people around you can be so key, as you probably would recommend to anyone who finds himself in a situation like that.
100%. But like as I said to you, hindsight is 2020. I think,
Yeah,
like, hopefully the more I speak about this, like I've done a podcast before where I spoke about this, the more I speak about this, hopefully if there's players or anybody sort of going through similar things to just to be able just to speak about it, because it affects you in ways that you can't realize. Like it affects your sleep patterns, it affects your mood, it affects how you're interacting with other people, and sometimes it's very hard to see that when you're not concentrating on it. You know what I mean? It's just you just think it's normal and you're completely in your head.
sure.
But it's very like it's very hard. Like I only reflecting now as a 33-year-old, I was 28 at the time, that I can understand where I went wrong with it.
Yeah,
But yeah, like living away from home, like there's so many young players who move away and they want to pursue their rugby dream, and they're not necessarily at the high level. Like players move home, they go play in New Zealand or Australia, or the opposite. They come to Ireland, England. They want to work and play rugby, and it's not always rosy.
sure.
It can be difficult, and like I think young men, I know I was sometimes, can be too proud to talk about, too proud to ask for help or to say what's wrong. You feel like no, I'm fine, like I'm a big strong man, like I can handle this. Where
Yeah.
the reality is sometimes you can't, and sometimes you need to talk and get support off people, because that's what friends and family are there for, to help you. And
Definitely, mate. Well, let's move on from the subject
yeah,
and just look to the future and what it holds for you rugby-wise. Where do you see yourself in a couple of years, next few years? Are you planning on staying in France? What's the next move?
well, I have one more year in my contract here in Beziers. I will be hopefully 34 years old when I'm finished that contract, and my body feels, my head feels good. I think that if I got an opportunity to play, I would maybe try and plan for one more, maximum 2 more years. And then maybe I'd love to try and get into coaching or stay around the game in some capacity. I think the great thing about playing in France is that you have sort of a buffer when you're finished. You're able to take a thing called chômage, which is you get basically unemployment up to 65% of your wages, for those listening who didn't know about the French system, which is great to be able just to give you time to, I suppose, see what you want to do at the next stage of your life. I think the tradition between rugby and the real world, because we live in a bubble a little bit, and the 9 to 5 job can be very difficult for players, and if you're not prepared for that, it can be very, very hard. I've had a number of players who retired, friends of mine, who've said how amazing it is to be retired. But most of those guys have steady jobs, whereas some guys who don't go into employment straight away, it can be very difficult for them.
Sure. So couple of questions from a few Instagram listeners, just to finish us off on a light
No
note,
worries.
on a lighter note. You got any favourite phrases in French? Do you speak fluent French?
Not fluent, but I can get by. So one of my favorite phrases is "Je m'appelle qui," which is something that I learned very early on here, which means basically I don't give a flying. I can't say the F word on your podcast.
You could, but then I'd have to like tick the box that says "not for kids."
Yeah, not for kids. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite expressions here. It's very French. There's a couple of other ones, obviously, that I've learned. Most of them are bad. Yeah.
Nice, mate.
Je suis rassasié, which is a common expression here for I am full when you're finished eating.
Yeah,
which is a nice one.
Cool. Right, I've got a couple of others. The best player who you've played with and against.
Oh wow!
And you don't have to say me.
I think you're top 3 or top 4, Sammy. I think there's 2 players that I play with that just at a different level above the rest of anybody who ever played. Like Issa Nasiwa, who played for Fiji one time and then came to Ireland. He could have been an All Black for sure, but he played for Fiji back, I think, in 2000.
Yeah.
He played everywhere in the back line, 10, 12.
What was his name,
30
sorry?
and 40. Issa Nasiwa.
Nice.
He's a Leinster legend. He retired when coaching for 2 years in the Blues in Auckland and came back and then won the Heineken Cup for Leinster. One of these guys, just outrageous talent that could do anything with a rugby ball. And then obviously the great Brian O'Driscoll, who was at Leinster also, just an absolute genius. I don't think I've ever seen a better operator in defence or attack when it comes to rugby. Just immense rugby knowledge and to the instinct to do the right thing at the right time. Just it was incredible. And then I suppose against, well, it would be those 2 players as well because I played against them as well. So when I played for Connacht, trying to think of any other internationals that I played for. Played against a couple of All Blacks when I was played Super Rugby. Aaron Smith was incredible. His passing and fitness levels, he was incredible. I never seen it like that for a number 9. And then props, I suppose, Paul James used to play for the Ospreys and Bath. He was one of my fiercest adversaries, even though he probably killed me every time I came up against him. He was an unbelievable scrummager. Really nice guy though as well. Duncan Jones on the Welsh prop was amazing. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to the next
and you,
question.
Sam, and you, sorry, and you too. And you,
mate, you didn't have to say it. You didn't have to say it. The most outrageous feat of strength or athleticism that you've witnessed at training, and apart from your own, obviously.
Oh yeah, I've got so many stories. I think, I think it has to go for Leo Halabatel, who I play with at London Irish, who basically could bench press more than people could squat. He really? Just like our S&C coach was a guy called Robbie Palmer, who was a British powerlifting champion. He said he never seen anything like him. He took like 230 off the bar, like this is a bench press, mind you, like it was nothing, and just like boom, 5 times, and that was probably the most impressive thing that I've ever seen, because like I don't think many people could even squat that, never mind bench press. And I remember after Robbie was gone, Leo, you just bench press 230, and he was just like, oh yeah, sweet bro.
Nice, mate. And I've got one final question from listeners. You've already touched upon it, and that was what it was like to win your first international cap. For you, maybe it's a different thing, because reflecting back, it is the one and only cap, like you say. Does that make it extra special, do you reckon? Or is there some kind of like regret that you couldn't have more maybe, or is it an extra special moment just because of the way it happened?
The memory that I have of it is amazing, because my mom was there, I had friends there, and I had like an amazing experience, an amazing time. I suppose looking back now, I wish I obviously played for Ireland again, and not realising that was the first and only time I was going to play for Ireland, I suppose is a little bit hard looking back. But like the fact that I actually, played and like got there and had a cap for my country is also amazing. So no, I'm very, very proud of it. One cap wonder. But yeah, definitely. Like I would love to play it 100 times, but it just wasn't to be. The stars didn't line up, and that's partly to do with me and my form after.
Part of the journey. It's part of the journey, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know. Like you could play for Ireland once, you could play 100 times. You just don't know sometimes. I think that you take everything with a pinch of salt sometimes, especially in this game. I've had friends who played for 12, 13 years. I've had friends who played for 5 years. I've had friends who had to retire from injury after 1 year who could have played for 10 years. I think the game of rugby is very, very fickle and delicate sometimes. The people who play it, we're all along for the journey. The coaches, players, we're all along for this journey that you never know what's going to happen. There's bends and turns in the river, and you might fall out of the boat and you try and get back in, but you might not. To use an analogy, you might not get back in, and then you're left swimming to shore.
Nice, love it. Jamie Hagan, thank you for this episode 7, mate. Really appreciate your honesty with your story, your journey, your experiences. It's been superb, and I'm sure that will reflect. Mate, appreciate your time, and definitely get you back on at some point in the future. That'd be awesome.
Mate. Definitely, mate. Great to speak to you again, Sammy. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Bye, mate. You can subscribe to the podcast at rugbyabroad.com. Thanks for listening in, and I hope you join me for the journey.